Sounds good.
So welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Brockett. We appreciate your time and speaking with us this afternoon. On the call with us today, we have our Executive Director, Maria Stepanyan, and our Director of Core Services, Heather Camper. And my name is Craig Towler, and I'm the Community Organizer with the Center for People with Disabilities.
Very good. Well, thanks so much for having me. And please do call me Aaron.
Okay. Thank you so much. I wasn't sure how formal we were being, but Aaron, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So we've been having these conversations, and we call them candidate forums, but they've kind of been one-on-one with the mayoral candidates, and we will be speaking with a couple candidates who are running for city council as well. And we just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce ourselves and make sure you knew who CPWD was and what we did in the community. Well, it looks like Michael Stone is trying to join. Let me text him the link. Sorry to pause right there. But this is the world of Zoom.
We live in these days.
There we go. Well, yeah, and in preparation for the upcoming elections that are right around the corner, we just wanted to have these conversations and allow the candidates to talk about issues that are important and specific to the disability community, and talk about disability rights and accessibility and the main things that are a priority to our community. So we wanted to use this time to kind of give you a platform to kind of share what you would like to say to our community to encourage them to vote for you when they get to the polls in November. And I know I sent you a few questions prior to the conversation. We can jump into a few of those questions, or just allow you the opportunity to say a few things that you find most important that you would like us to know coming up to the election. And 1 second, please, Aaron, I'm going to let Michael in right now. Hi, Michael. This is Craig. Welcome. And Deb is joining as well. All right, we have a full house now. Perfect.
All right.
Hi, Deb. Welcome. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Craig. How are you?
Doing well. No, it's okay. Michael, on the call, we have myself, Aaron Brockett, Maria Stepanyan, Heather Camper, and Deb Conley. So everyone's here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Well, so Craig, do you mind if I just start with a few words?
Yeah, please.
And so I won't do a whole stump speech, but one of the things that I talk about in my campaign is about how we need to make sure that Boulder is a just, equitable, accessible, and inclusive place. And that's for all individuals who reside in our community, regardless of their life circumstance and their income levels and their ethnicities and their abilities of one kind or another. So those are core values of mine that I strive to make sure that there's a place for everyone in our community to thrive. And certainly just a little bit of personal context. I've had a fair amount of experience with people with disabilities in my own family. My uncle was in a wheelchair. He was in a bus accident. He was paralyzed from the chest down. We were very close growing up. So went many places with him and helped him awkwardly into many establishments that were not actually accessible. And so I have many vivid memories from my younger years of trying to get him into places that were not well designed. And so really felt that viscerally. Unfortunately, because of his injuries, he passed away in his 40s, so hasn't been with us for a while, but that was a lot of my childhood. And I also have a child with an intellectual disability, so I see some of those challenges in my own family, as well as friends and neighbors with developmental disabilities. And so it's important to when we talk about how to make our community accessible for everyone to think about the different abilities and challenges that many different kinds that people experience. And like my youngest kid who has intellectual disability likes to talk about like the social model of disability, which is like having really poor eyesight is a kind of a disability, except if you have a good pair of glasses, you're just fine, right? So how can we make sure that our society is set up in such a way that kind of regardless of how people get around or their life experiences, that our city works for everyone. So those are just a few thoughts kind of on this topic, but I'm also very interested to hear what you all have to say, because I won't pretend that I have all the answers, and I would love to learn some while I'm here today too.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it's really important to have that lived experience and exposure to people with disabilities within your family. And it's really, really important to just know what it's like to be around people with disabilities and our needs and what actual equality and equity means. And you kind of said it right there, the importance of having access to the tools needed for equality and everyone having equal access. So thank you so much. And we did have a few questions that we proposed and that we asked a prior candidate during one of these forums. So if it's okay with you, we'll jump into a couple of those, and then we can kind of allow Michael and Deb, who just joined, and they're board members at CPWD. I forgot to mention that. And then we can jump in with kind of more specific questions to the broad topics that I'll bring up here that I know are on everybody's mind and would be really helpful just to hear your views and perspective on them to help people kind of understand who you are as a candidate as we make our way to the upcoming election.
Yeah.
So as the current mayor and running as the incumbent, could you provide an example of a successful policy from your current term as mayor that has improved disability rights and or accessibility in Boulder?
So I think it's been a thread that has kind of run throughout the efforts that I've done. So as I just mentioned, about how I try to integrate that in all of my thinking. But I'd say like one important example would be, we've added hundreds and hundreds of units of affordable housing to the city over the last few years, and that's of a variety of types. Like, so sometimes people criticize the fact that we sometimes use cash and lieu money from a development to put affordable housing somewhere else, but that actually sometimes allows us to produce kinds of housing that wouldn't be possible otherwise. So I'm really proud of the fact that at the 30 Pearl development, there is, I believe it's 30 units of apartments for people with developmental disabilities. And that's a first of its kind in our city. And I don't know of another place nearby that's done it either. So I'm really proud that we took that step. And also included in that building some affordable commercial space that is leased by the Ramble on Pearl that employs people with developmental disabilities as well. So that's an example of how our inclusive approach to housing in general and affordable commercial space is bringing in and giving people new opportunities that they haven't had before. Another one that I'll mention is there's a great partnership over on 6400 Arapahoe with 6300 with the Resource Central and EcoCycle. So there's a program there at Resource Central where people with the intellectual disabilities, folks with autism, are helping with electronics deconstruction and warehousing and such over there. And that's been a joint partnership between the city and Resource Central and at least one other partner as well. So those are a couple examples of things where I think we've accomplished something I'm proud of.
Those are really great. Thank you so much. I've heard about the new, I think, coffee house Ramble, and that sounds like a really amazing place. I'd love to check it out, and only heard about it recently. So that's really great that those are that location is available.
And if I can just mention the Biddy and Bose, the new coffee shop, I was at their grand opening back a couple weeks ago and posted about it on social media. It was so exciting, like to see the folks with developmental intellectual disabilities, like super excited for their new jobs. And that's my new favorite spot now.
Yeah, so it's only been open for a couple of weeks. That's really great. We'll have to make it over there. Well, great. Before we move on to the next question, do we have any follow-up questions. I know Aaron had mentioned affordable housing, and I know we've had some questions specific to affordable housing. Deb, I know you had mentioned a question about housing in the questions you submitted prior. Would you like to ask that now, or should we move on to another one of the questions from the list?
I would like to, I guess, add on to that topic with a question that I sent in earlier this morning. That with the amount of affordable housing going up in Boulder, I guess I'm wondering why you're still advocating for the increase in occupancy rate for non-familial people in Boulder.
Yeah, well, so many folks in our community struggle to have access to housing, and it's often younger folks or people who are struggling to get by, lower income folks. And sharing housing is one of the best ways to make housing attainable and affordable for people who are struggling to have housing. And so that includes the 60,000 people who commute into town, many students, many young folks. I have a 20-year-old, so I can see how hard up close it is to try to afford rent on a minimum wage or close to minimum wage job. So the great thing about raising the occupancy limits is that without building anything new, it unlocks a substantial amount of housing availability for folks who wouldn't have been able to live in town otherwise, or who are already living with 4 or 5 people in a house illegally, and allows them to come out of the shadows. I'll make sure that they can register to vote without fearing that they'll be discovered that they're illegally overoccupied. So I think the raising it from 3 to 5 was a judicious step forward. It meets the needs of most people without kind of allowing for a level of overoccupancy that could be unsafe or result in substandard housing. And I'll mention too that this is often the way for people to live with chosen families. This is often true in the LGBTQ community or folks for whom more traditional family systems don't work out for them. So it gives people a way to live in some amount of community as well in that way. So I feel like it's a positive step forward for inclusivity for folks of many different backgrounds and incomes in our town.
Have you listened to the feedback from Boulder residents who are opposed to that? I mean, I'm currently the city doesn't do a really good job in code enforcement on property for people, and it becomes a problem with people for disabilities who are moving on sidewalks, and the housing has overgrown vegetation. And with the increased density, it's going to be more problematic to enforce those codes. I mean, because currently you got a problem in Boulder with that.
Yeah, so we do need to do better on code enforcement. Like, there's no question about that. And so we have some hiring shortages right now. So we're staffing up there. We're also adding additional budget for code compliance in our next, in this budget cycle we're just getting into right now. So we're bringing on new resources in that area. But I think it's important to enforce on the problems, which is overgrown vegetation is a great example, or improperly maintained sidewalks. Those are the city's responsibility in many cases, but sometimes private property owners, and other things that make it harder to get around. So I totally agree with you. It's critically important that we have good code enforcement in those areas, but I would say we can still have additional housing availability for people who desperately need it while focusing on the problems rather than the people. So that's my response to folks. And also that it was not a removing of occupancy limits entirely. And we also did actually do a tweak in the in terms of houses that were that are non-conforming, meaning they're denser than would be allowed by today's standards. They actually don't have the higher occupancy limits, and those are in a lot of the areas where we get the code complaints, like on the Hill and such. So we did have a moderating policy there in that area.
I'm not sure what you mean by moderating policy.
It's just that we didn't grant the higher occupancy to the denser properties that are at density levels that are not allowed today. So, and those are actually quite common on the Hill. So the higher occupancy isn't applying to, I'd say 2,000 or 3,000 housing units that are denser than what's currently allowed. So that's moderating the increase in occupancy because it doesn't apply everywhere, particularly to the denser spots.
I'm sorry to ask another question, follow-up question that we may last, but with the increasing non-familial people, how are you going to issue citations to a unit that has non-related people who is going to face the penalty for non-compliance?
So generally, it's the residents of the property. So I think they would be they would have to pay whatever fine or remediation in general. But we're also moving towards an ordinance of kind of about nuisance properties later this fall. So occasionally we do have landlords who are not kind of living up to their responsibilities for maintaining their properties well or making sure their tenants are behaving well. So we are going to add additional provisions that if we have really misbehaving landlords, that we can hold them somewhat accountable as well. So it's mostly the residents who get the direct feedback and the penalties, but also looking at taking steps for landlords that aren't maintaining their properties appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. Appreciate that conversation, Deb. So continuing on the theme of code enforcement, I know that's a big issue that is important to our community, and it really impacts our safety and how we navigate the city in our everyday lives and the livability of our city. And I know Michael and myself work frequently with the City of Boulder Transportation Department on new projects, and we currently gave some feedback on the new Iris Corridor project that's taking place between Broadway and 28th on Iris. And we did kind of a roll and stroll on that area. And we pointed out a lot of infrastructure issues that were kind of overgrown shrubs. And a lot of questions of code enforcement came up. But a really big one is when sidewalks are blocked and the dangers that cause for people with added mobility needs or people that are low vision or blind that use white canes, and just how dangerous that is and how that affects overall quality of life because we're unable to navigate our city in a safe way. And a specific example of that I know is something Michael can speak more directly to because we've all dealt with this is Lime scooters and how they are kind of left all over the place and blocking streets. And when you're a person who uses a wheelchair like myself, or you're a person who uses a white cane like Michael, if there's an obstruction blocking the road in a curb cut, you're unable to pass. And it can lead to a dangerous situation to where you injure yourself running into it or trying to move it. And that would be kind of a question about code enforcement and how you would help navigate something like that, understanding the immediacy and the need of the issue, knowing that it's affecting people right now.
Yeah, it's a great question. Very, very timely, of course, with the rollout of the scooters throughout town, and it's definitely had some rollout pains. It has not gone perfectly, for sure. And I've actually been in really very regular conversations with the local director of Lime Scooters. I just talked to him yesterday, and we were talking about how the level of obstructions of sidewalks is unacceptable. And he agreed that is the case. He says that their intention is to not at all obstruct sidewalks, but of course it is happening, and it needs to be done better. It needs to be kept under better control. So they're currently working on doing a couple different things in that area. One is finding more parking corral opportunities. So where you've got spots where the scooters are parked completely outside of the sidewalk or in designated areas. And then having requirements that a scooter be in that area. If you're parking it like that, they won't let you discontinue the session unless you put it in one of those areas. And the other is better immediate feedback that a scooter is parked improperly. So better instructions for people about where to put them, and then also a very quick feedback loop to the Lime team so that they can remove those if they are placed improperly ASAP. And we have a service level agreement with them that they have to respond very quickly when there are reports. But so this is not where it needs to be, and our transportation partner is also very aware of this, and so they're also working with Lyme, and it's also a focus for our code compliance people. So, and Lyme will be subjected to penalties if they cannot improve the situation. So it's a known active issue and one that we're working hard on getting to a better place.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Before we move to the next question, would anyone like to add to that question or ask a follow-up question while we're on the topic? Michael?
I'd love to. First off, Craig, gosh, you never cease to amaze me on how eloquent you ask these questions. Mayor Brockett, it's nice to meet you. We had a quick hello. I was at the Boulder Chamber event. Gosh, it was it a month ago, circa about that.
Oh, good to
at
see
the
you.
JCC. Yeah, and that was an interesting experience, and it was a little disheartening for me because at that event, not a single moment people with disabilities were brought up by anybody, and it was hard, and the event itself was not accessible. As a blind person in the audience, it was I was almost in tears on how poor that was. And I don't blame the candidates on that one. That was that one really was just the way that it was set up. For example, I had a deaf friend who just had to get up and leave because ASL wasn't even considered for that event. And so so some of these things I'm going to say are relevant to that Lyme scooter, but just a few disconnects, because I'm going to bring it back a little bit. We in the disability community had the opportunity to participate in some surveys that were done. It was the Be Heard. Most of us did the best we could to do that. It was actually a really wonderful time for us because we actually felt like we were heard with it. I know that employee is no longer who Jenny Godwin, who was involved with that. It was an interesting time, and one that so a lot of these matters had come up, and this precedes things like Lime scooter and so forth, and transportation and overgrown sidewalk obstructions and people blocking curb cuts, and the list goes on. And thank you for sharing your personal experience with your uncle. In addition to my role on the board of directors, I also do disability work with the state of Colorado, and I'm part of the new task force, if you've heard of it, that's it's implementing a lot of new legislation. It's going to be exciting times for the state because it's been acknowledged that ADA is a floor and really a very, very low bar for the standards. I mean, you said it perfectly when you mentioned how awkward it was with your uncle, and to say the least, that's the case. And so when we were having these conversations and having these discussions, we really thought that we were heard, and that there was going to be some positive change. Instead, it really went the other direction, and so it's very confusing to be a part of that disconnect. Whether or not, because you're right, it's a lot of times it's residents with respect to overgrown landscaping, but there's an inherent disconnect somewhere along these lines. So one of the greatest services that you have is the Inquire Boulder, and the Inquire Boulder app. And Craig, when we were out with some of your city went to transportation a week or two ago. We always love to talk about the problems and complaints, but there's also an opportunity to give compliments. And for example, that app has become significantly more accessible. It was unusable as a blind person. You were the screen reader for a long time, and every time I had something to report or to anyways, it was, it was next to impossible. Now it's actually working quite well. And I'd like to take this opportunity, and if you wouldn't mind passing along my personal compliments, that really has come a long way. And I want to say thank you. With that, so I started to, because what else are we going to do when we run into these scooters? And it's not just them blocking the sidewalks. Obviously, the speed in which people use powered these things on sidewalks. It's the one place that people with disabilities should feel safe, and yet we just can't. It's just so it goes a long way. So what I did what I thought was the right thing, was to take photos and did the Inquire Boulder, and I received a very nice email in response closing the matter, saying this is not our responsibility. And here's the information for Lime and B-Cycle, and you can contact them. So I did, and I received nothing but the runaround. One person from Lime Scooter actually asked me to identify the number, the vehicle number. So I had already identified myself as blind, and so forth. But it had been this scooter had been blocking the sidewalk here in my neighborhood, making it impossible for me to access the bus safely without having to go actually out into the street, which is unfortunate when I did. And this was with my guide dog, and that scooter has been out there still for over a week. And I appreciate what you said, that the rollout hasn't been perfect, and I listen. We're allowed to have growing pains in that direction. I just think it's important that since we're on the subject, and really take it to its fullest extent as to really what this means. And I mean, for example, the pedestrian mall. I've been living in Boulder for circa 30 years. I remember when certain things were just not tolerated, and people were cited immediately for just riding a skateboard. Now it's like Lord of the Flies there. You could do whatever you want, where you want, how you want, with no repercussion whatsoever. And so this is a very loaded statement. The disconnect is obviously what we're being told, and obviously the direction that we were going in with the Be Heard to where we're living now. And obviously it's not just it's more than just a significant problem, because it's interesting. The buzz is, let's talk about encampments and homeless, and that's the root of all evils. Yet to me there's nothing more scary than our local residents not allowing our sidewalks in a way for people who depend on those sidewalks and or other just mobility needs to be met. And so it's a significant problem. And I'm going to leave you with, because you mentioned the budget. One of your opponents who came on and spoke to us mentioned the budget, and this is Nicole Spear. I'm going to refer to her as she. Flat out said that the budget was maxed. That there was no more money for code enforcement or to deal with these things, and it wasn't the most pleasant answer for us to hear. But because you mentioned the budget, and that a new budget perhaps is coming out that's going to deal with some of these matters, which was encouraging. So anyways, I'm sorry for loading on to all that, but hopefully you're able to follow some of that.
Yeah. Well, no, Michael, thank you for all that, because as I said before, part of what I would like to do here today is learn more. And so this has been very informative, what you just said to me, so I really appreciate it. So just respond a little bit. That's great to hear about Inquire Boulder, the app being better, and I will pass along that positive feedback. So that's really good to hear. Very distressing to hear that the reporting to Lime has been unsuccessful and not accommodating at all. And I will absolutely pass that feedback on. That's unacceptable. A report should be enough, right? And they should then do the due diligence to figure out what the problem is and get it resolved. So that's alarming to hear because that's not what they're telling me. They're saying they're being very responsive. So I'll definitely pass that along and ask or tell them that they need to do better for sure. That's critical. In terms of the mall, I hear your frustration there. There are a lot of problems in our community right now. And so enforcement in some areas is not where it needs to be or where we want it to be. So like the police in the past have done more patrols along the mall, and they're been unable to do that as much in the last year or two because of staffing shortages and other demands on their time. But it is a goal of theirs to get back up to speed or to full staff to help with some of the problems we've seen around the mall. And what that means is they're not going to. I don't think the police are going to probably start ticketing people who have a dog on the mall, for example. But we have the downtown ambassadors now, and as they're a little overtaxed themselves, but as they get more support, they'll have more time for enforcement in this area and requiring people to stop that. We also have a new non-police-based emergency response program that I'm really excited about that sends out a paramedic and a social worker to kind of behavioral health calls that don't involve a public safety risk. And so that's going to help with some general enforcement and also just increase our capacity overall. It's shown to produce better outcomes in responding to issues that people are having, and that increases our capacity overall. So looking forward to that. And then I won't claim that we have a huge amount of money floating around right now. We have a lot of priorities, but this code enforcement, it's actually our city manager, Nuria Rivera Vandermeid. Her first part of her career in city government was in code enforcement in a previous city. So this is something that she has a knowledge and kind of a passion for, and is an area where we're devoting more resources in next year's budget and plans.
Can I ask on those Boulder ambassadors?
Yeah.
They can issue citations? That's new to me.
They cannot issue citations. They could say, "Hey, excuse me, sir, you're not allowed to ride a bike on the mall."
That doesn't help. I'm gonna just say, because I've been here since the 80s, and it used to be very often. I mean, you would be able to see police officers walking the mall and near the bus stop, the bus station, and it really helped that they were actively engaging with the community, besides on just writing citations and making sure that it's a safe place for everybody. That if the ambassadors, it's great that they're there. It's great to have an ambassador, but if you can't actually enforce it, have the authority, that doesn't really help, because they're powerless against the people who really want to violate that and continue to make it difficult for the park and the mall, Pearl Street Mall, to be enjoyable by everybody.
Yeah, and point taken, Deb. I mean, if you can't have a citation, there are no teeth there. But I will say there are a lot of people who will comply when told what the rules are. So I think they can make a difference. They can't fix the problem on their own. We actually, one other program we have just started, though, as well as the Urban Park Ranger program, and those are officers who can write citations.
And I'm going to jump in real quick. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and our meeting will end in 2 minutes. If we have extra time to continue the conversation, please let me know. I think we'd love to chat for a few more minutes and ask some more questions, but we also know that you're busy and have a lot on your plate right now and want to respect that. So thank you so much. And we'd love to continue chatting if we could, but
I don't have a hard stop.
Okay.
So I have preparation I have to do for the meeting tonight at 6, but I'm happy to stay on for a while longer.
Okay.
Great.
So I ended up having to switch us to a Zoom link because I wanted to record this. So the meeting is going to kick us off in a minute. So I'm going to send everyone a new meeting link to rejoin. I know that's can be kind of confusing, but I'm going to email that to everyone right now. And then we can rejoin that. Yeah.
I actually have another meeting at 4, so I won't be able to join, but thank you for coordinating this.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Karen, and thank you for listening to us. I appreciate that. And remember, we're always here for resources.
I appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. Bye.
Yes, thank you so much. So you should have received a new link in your email. And I'm going to put it in the chat as well. And we'll see you over there.
Hold on 1 second. Let me make sure I get it out of the chat because I'm not seeing my email yet. Okay.
Thanks, Deb. Appreciate you being here. All right. Thanks, Heather. Are you able to continue or are you done?
A few more minutes. I'll stay on 4:10.
Cool. All right. Perfect. Yeah, and to kind of wrap up that conversation on enforcement, I think the biggest point that we'd like to get across and really help with the disconnect that Michael was speaking to was we understand the struggles with enforcement and everything involved, but without that accountability, it's mostly people with disabilities who are disproportionately affected by that lack of enforcement. And when it's affecting our daily quality of life and putting us in dangerous situations that force us to not be able to navigate through our communities in a safe and low stress way on a daily basis, that forces us to not want to leave our house and become more isolated and remove us from our community. And that's where we want to help connect the dots to why this is a priority to our communities and why it is continuously frustrating to hear that it's always someone else's job to enforce, whether it's the city telling us that it's Lime Scooter's job to enforce, and then kind of vice versa. And that is where the frustration comes with our community, because it's something that can't really be put on hold in our daily lives, because that's asking us to put our lives on hold and not be able to be full members of the community because we don't feel safe. And I think that's really what we want to help articulate and help with that understanding through our lived experiences, so that when we're addressing these issues, it's more than just a budget issue or something that we're working on, but really understand the immediacy of it and why we wanted to really highlight those and share those lived experiences with you.
I appreciate that very much.
And then continuing, I know we do have limited time, but I did want to get to this last question because it's something that, you know, is really the main intention of us wanting to have this conversation and introduce you to CPWD and some of our staff and board members and our directors. Is you had mentioned that it was really helpful to hear our lived experiences and to ask questions for us. And in my mind, that sounds like collaboration. So in your current term, and if you become the incumbent and are elected again for a second term, what steps will you take to collaborate with disability advocacy groups and involve people with disabilities in decision-making processes that affect the city?
Yeah, well, I think it's critically important to do so when issues arise that concern the disability community, and so that we shouldn't be making assumptions on our own. Those of us who don't have lived experience, or obviously we all have, even if we struggle with one issue, there are people with many different issues out there. So I think involving people with a wide variety of lived experiences is incredibly important, and so which is where your center is so valuable, because you work with people with all different kinds of lived experiences and can help channel that and help us understand that. And so I know that, like, for example, when we were evaluating the possibility of allowing e-bikes on open space trails, I know there was some outreach done at that time, about how that might assist. And there was some mixed feedback, but we also did get a message that, hey, there are folks who aren't able to experience those trails without an e-bike, and so with an e-bike that opens that experience up to a broader spectrum of folks, and that was definitely impactful to my thinking about the topic. And I know there was another time I remember that we had, I'm going to lose the exact circumstance, but there was a time where there was like a staff member who was making a case for a policy based on how it could help with people with disabilities. And I remember a couple of us asked, well, did we consult with the community about that, or are we kind of making an assumption here? And the answer was that, well, actually, we're making an assumption. And we said, well, if this is going to be part of the decision-making process, you really need to go and consult with the center and other folks, sort of, with that lived experience, rather than making the case all on our own. So that's something. This is actually being really helpful, this discussion today, since I haven't met with you all, in person or virtually before. So this helps me think about how I can do better in my next term, if I'm reelected, to do this more often, earlier and more often, is when an issue comes up that clearly has potential impacts, is to reach out, not at the day of the public hearing, but as we're first considering the topic. And so that's something I've done, I'd say, some of before, but something I would pledge to do substantially more of in the next term, because we want to get that input early on to make sure it's shaping things throughout, rather than just being maybe included at the very end where we're already making the final decision.
Thank you so much. That's really, really good to hear that, and understanding the need for having diverse perspectives at the table when looking at policy issues and making decisions that impact our community kind of from the ground up, and knowing that our lived experiences have value and should be incorporated into the policies that we're building. And we definitely want to be an asset and a tool to help provide those lived experiences and resources for you and anyone else that has decision-making power and policy to build, and power to build policies that impact us. And there's a disability rights adage that you're probably familiar with, nothing about us without us. And we're really trying to evolve that to nothing without us, because we strongly believe that every issue is a disability rights issue, because we're a part of the community, we're the largest minority in the country, and every issue affects us, whether it's disability specific or not. And incorporating our diverse perspective and lived experiences is going to be invaluable in creating truly equal and equitable policies for our community. So we really, want to be used as an asset and have that seat at the table moving forward within our communities, and help grow our community to be the place that we all know that it can be. And with that, I know you have another meeting to prepare for, and I have a bunch of more questions, but we'll have to schedule a follow-up meeting and continue the conversation in some respect. And I'll open it up for any last questions for Michael, Heather. Really appreciate you being here and listening and being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, it's it's very easy to bombard and say for it, but realistically, and when Maria was signing off, she made that we're saying we're here, and Craig said it well as well. We are here, and we talked about enforcement. Education's a big component of this, and that's that. If there is anything that is truly lacking, in addition, it would be great. And like you said, being late to the table sometimes is never going to be the answer. But we are here for education. We do quite a bit of it. And there's a lot of opportunities that we should really talk about and see how we can implement these sort of educational programs throughout, and see if we can head this off a little bit. Because I'm guessing, for example, a lot of our residents don't even know what the code is. We've had so many people that have moved here from other places, and they're used to a different system. But my guess is that they just don't know. So anyways, I want to say thank you. And I got to run to my next meeting as well. And I look forward to meeting you more. And I wish you luck with your campaign. And hopefully, please reach out to us if we can be of any other help. And hopefully there'll be some follow-up.
I really appreciate that, Michael. And then Heather, you haven't had a chance to say it, but if you had a question as well, I'm happy to take it.
Thank you. I actually have to run too, but my colleagues all it's just been a pleasure listening to this discussion and getting to know you and your vision for Boulder a bit more. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Heather and Greg and Michael. It's been informative for me, and I appreciate the chance to have the conversation. And let's keep it going.
That's good.
Yes, thank you so much. And please reach out any follow-up questions, and if you'd like to answer any of the other questions that were in the email planning this. And yeah, just love to continue the conversation. And if you're ever around our offices in Boulder, we'd love to invite you in, give you a tour, and explain to you a little bit more about what our center does and the communities that we serve, and just kind of help increase the education of that. And I would definitely agree with Michael, where education and awareness is going to be essential to a lot of this, because policy and enforcement can only do so much. We need active participation from our entire community to truly make this, to live up to what we all know it can be and how great it should be for all of our residents. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your evening, and look forward to being in touch.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, and I'll take you up on the tour offer. I'd love to do that.
Perfect.
Sometime.
Great. Then I'll follow up with an email and let you know how we'll be sharing the transcript of this conversation with our consumers to help educate them a little bit about your vision for Boulder prior to the election. And we'll definitely welcome you in for a tour.
Fantastic. All right. We'll take
Great.
care. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.